to another exciting edition of Blighty Day Fiancé. I'm Jack in Southern California. Joining me today, Michelle in London, and Cousin Dan, whereabouts unknown somewhere in England. How are you guys all today?
Sheffield, but never mind.
I'm trying to leave things anonymous here, Michelle.
The geographical north of the country.
Hey up.
An hour away from Newcastle.
Okay, which brings us into today's show. So, Dan, do you feel like you have a good handle on these people this week?
I'm starting to think that Sam might be an elaborate hoax because it was painful.
The only thing missing, so this is for our American listeners who are not familiar with people from Newcastle. They're called Geordies. You may have heard of Geordie Shore, which was inspired by Jersey Shore. And every negative stereotype about them is embodied in this one person. The only thing that's missing is footage of her in the middle of winter wearing, let's just say, scantily clad when it's like minus 30 degrees. And she's drinking, what would she be drinking?
WKD Blue.
Yep, correct.
Now, what would the equivalent in the U.S. of that be? So it's a high sugar content beverage?
Super high sugar content, yeah.
Okay,
Like,
American listeners.
You couldn't think of a number that high.
It's like it's like doing a Jello shot, but like with Welch's grape juice. It's really fucking gross. Yeah.
Ugh. What
Yeah.
about okay.
Or Manischewitz, if you
yeah,
prefer.
that's where my mind was going.
Welcome to the show. If this is your first time, we are a very broad church, as it were. Please let us know who you are. Come at us on social at Blighty Day Fiancé. Email us, bladydayfiance@gmail.com. Join our Patreon, patreon.com/bladydayfiance. You will get, at the $10 tier and the $15 tier, you will get vidya. So you'll be able to see how slutty Jack looks today. Show him the guns, show him the arms.
Even on a non-Patreon episode?
Even on a... Well, it's on... Yeah.
Somebody called bird protection because those swans are sick.
Thank you, Dan. I like getting these compliments all the way across the ocean and a continent. Makes my day.
I'm just saying, you're asking for it dressing like that. I'm never going to not ask you to do that when you're wearing a tank top.
I don't
or a vest
mind.
top, as we call them here.
Oh, they're vest tops. Oh, I like that name. Now, I think I may have skipped over what we're talking about today, which is 90 Day Fiancé UK Season 3, Episode 5, Happy Wife, Happy Life, which I guess was on full display in this week's episode. Kathleen and Jamie. All right. A lot to say on this one. Who wants to kick it off?
Kathleen does not like the beach because she can't swim. That is a wrong, stupid opinion to have. The beach is great, and if you don't like it, there are better reasons to not like the beach.
Than not being able to swim, you're saying?
Yeah. No one goes in the water. I think it's more closely related to her broader complaint, which is that Jamie is too hairy to put sunscreen on, and he won't do it himself. Did anyone else notice that he was wearing dinosaur print bathers? How long do we think he's owned those?
4 years? What do you think?
Just to go back to the point at hand, I think he's just incredibly infantilized by his mother.
I was speaking to one of our listeners who's worked in mental health for many years, and she is of the opinion that adult mental health, I should say. She's worked with a lot of autistic and neurodiverse people. She is of the opinion that that is not the case here, and that he is what they call a failure to launch. So he's been kept in this childlike state of dependency by his mother, and probably his father too, if his father is around. We don't know. I mean, it sounds like from context that his father is around, just maybe doesn't want to be on camera. So uh he's not an autistic person, not an unwell person, just somebody who, you know, happens to there's an arrested development there, I suppose.
Now, with the Arrested Development, would you blame Arrested Development for comments such as I need to take too much, I need to take care too much with Jamie, and they always tell me you need to find a nice Filipina girl to take care of you.
Well, he didn't say. Kathleen said she needs to
Yes,
take
sorry,
too much care of him.
I just merged
No,
my quotes.
they always tell me you need to find a nice Filipina girl to take care of you. Um,
Who's they?
yeah. Well, great question. It's a shame my husband can't join us here because he is from Stanmore, and this is not the kind of representation that Stanmore is looking for. If you're all smelling what I'm stepping in here,
We can all
um,
smell it.
Jack, you've previously spoken about not being able to not being able to reach completion if your mom calls.
Oh, yes, we
Um,
were talking about this
we
yesterday.
were talking about this yesterday. So, would you go out of your way to
On
call
the
your
show for the
Yes.
it was
Yeah.
on a show.
Yeah, no, we weren't in the immortal words of Mary Brown from Sister Wives, we don't get weird. Um
But yes, please,
Just
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, are you in the habit of calling your mom while you're on a date?
No, I can say I think the last time I spoke to my mother while on a date was a bailout phone call. I think that's the only time I would talk to my mother, which was
Right.
hey, I'm going out with someone. I have no idea how this is going to go. Can you please call? And if I'm not having a good time, it's an emergency, right, Mom? So I do appreciate that part, but yeah, the intentional call for any other reason on a date is worrying, to say the least.
What's your
so
take, cousin?
so one thing that I noticed during that phone call, and it was the sign off, and it stuck out like a sore thumb, which was "Tell her to carry on the good work," and it was that sort
Ooh.
of weird acknowledgement, and I don't know whether like she realized, but she was effectively acknowledging that she's not brought a grown ass man into the world to be able to look after himself. He needs somebody who can look after him 24/7. And
Do you think Sorry, go ahead.
I think that also talks back to so other thing I noticed was his love language is spoken words. So he tells her he loves her, that she's pretty and everything, like quite a lot. And I think that might be not because that is his primary love language. It's just it's the simplest one to learn because you don't have to follow up on any other actions.
Right.
You can just say it.
I want to know what the relationship is with Marietta,
Yes.
because
Yeah. Go ahead.
who is on the verge of weeping from the moment Kathleen and Jamie show up. Um, I don't understand that friendship. I mean, look, we don't get to pick our friends, partners, unfortunately, and in some cases it's our role to carry them through the pains and the slings and arrows and all of that. I have never openly wept when someone cheats on a friend of mine. I usually go straight to, right, I've got, 6 acres of land in upstate New York and my dad's shotgun, and I don't know how much anyone's going to miss him, really.
Well,
In
now,
Minecraft. It allegedly never happened.
Allegedly, yeah.
now, do you think this is a cultural thing or a friendship thing? That's just, and not necessarily related to culture at all. But and I ask because, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like culture was brought up a little bit in this friend reaction.
Yeah, I didn't
Just talking
quite.
about and sorry, yeah, I just let me just explain what I heard a little bit more there was just that it was basically like in their culture, they were saying if you cheat on somebody, all of the friends will look at you and take it as if you've cheated on them because we care about each other so much.
Okay, I missed that.
That was in there
Okay.
somewhere, but regardless, though, if that's the case, and not getting into cultural shifts, but to bring that in, I don't know what the like. What do either of you feel the point of this reaction is, or the impetus of this reaction? Is it you know?
It seemed like a really, really overwrought reaction, truth be told. I don't know whether it was for the camera, whether there was, I don't know, maybe a producer kind of going, you need to show emotion, and they basically took the ball and ran with it. Because I mean, just cutting aside, did he really cheat on her? Because weren't they on a break?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. I think the critical part of what happened is that he was flirting and maybe doing more than flirting with her close friend while they were on a break. Like, to me, that's the significant part.
But it's not cheating.
No, it isn't. No.
But this also falls into the philosophy of breakups, right? In terms of it only becomes a break when you reconcile. Now, Jamie might have moved on, and then feelings might have changed. So, when does recovering from a relationship to establishing a new one to then reconciling your previous relationship, when does that become cheating exactly? Because ultimately, and especially in Jamie's part, where I'm pretty sure his prefrontal cortex hasn't really moved past object permanism, that he would think, well, we've broken up, so new boobies on phone, girlfriend, love. So
Just kind of like pressing the buttons, checking the boxes.
yeah,
Yeah, but it shouldn't be with one of her close friends.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, but it seems, are there any non-close friends in this situation?
Yeah, that's true. They're all like family, I guess. I don't
Right.
know. Wait, but also there's an entire like
but also
there's
nobody's calling
multiple.
her out on her behavior. the the
100%.
the, the
Yeah.
sisterhood should hold in this situation, right?
Well, but I think maybe we're seeing that the sisterhood says our sister is correct no matter what is going on. Is that? I mean, because if they're not taking her to task at all, they're
So
not
basically,
going to.
we've got Thai woman and murder going on, where like nobody's talking about the fact that there are two parties involved, and
Right. You mean where they're just kind of tossing it all onto him?
all I'm saying is that Jamie's thousands of miles away from the situation. He didn't have to console her, watch beaches with her, eat chocolate, and kind of like help her recover from the fact that a relationship had broken up. So he's like removed from the situation. If she's that close, she's been there, she's seen it, she's told him he ain't shit, and she still reached for her phone and sent a picture of her tits. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So who in this situation, Your Honor, really is the piece of shit, is all I'm saying.
To let the jury decide that one.
Question is posed that I'd like to put to both of you.
Yeah.
Once a cheater, always a cheater. True?
So
Okay, so let's let the serial monogamist answer first. Okay.
Yeah.
I will say that while people have patterns, and of course you should be mindful of how people have treated other people they've been in relationships with, I think you have to give people room to grow and improve. And just because someone has cheated in a prior relationship, I don't like the full blown encircling of once a cheater, always a cheater. Maybe you're with the wrong person. Maybe you need to be with the right person to learn how to not cheat. Or maybe you're just a cheater. I mean, those are all options, but I do not like the all encompassing view of once a cheater, always a cheater. It feels reductive and simplistic for very complicated human relationships.
Cousin?
I think that I vehemently agree with Jack. I think that context and situation is everything. I think that sometimes monogamy isn't a relationship style that you can necessarily live with, for whatever reason. So maybe that's something that you need to address, maybe in your relationships. I don't think that monogamy is for everybody, and if you can explore that in a healthy, honest way, then it's not necessarily cheating, it's polyamory or ethical non-monogamy, whatever you want to call it. Whether Jamie gets that, I don't know. And also, it's something that's fairly, obviously, non-monogamy is age-old, and ethical non-monogamy can also be, tracked back thousands of years.
Certainly.
It's a fairly new concept or a fairly, how do I put it? It's much more acceptable now as we live in more open times.
Yes, and our generation revived it, just like we revived eating ass, which we discovered, which I've said many times, didn't exist before our generation. No one else was doing it.
So over breakfast, what was your Michelle? What was your general takeaway from this breakfast scene?
So I think that this is speaking to. I think this is a lot of talk with zero intention of following through. When we were talking about the cheating situation, I was thinking, how would Jamie's mom, who Robin pointed out is exactly like Marsha from Spaced, which is a late 90s, early 2000s British sitcom that hopefully some of you will be familiar with.
Still Simon Pegg's best work.
I totally agree. I think that I don't think Marsha would be. I think if Jamie sat down and said, "Hey, Mum, hello, Mum. I was just thinking instead of having one wife, I'm going to casually date 3 or 4 different women at the same time."
Fair dues, babe. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah, I don't see her going for that
No.
necessarily. So therefore he won't do it. It's also a complete, he's never going to defend Kathleen to his mom, whatever that means. I don't know what she needs defending from necessarily. She does say that she wants to explain cultural differences. Maybe that's to do with money. Maybe that's to do with other things. I don't know. I just don't think Marsha is going to go for that. And I don't think Jamie is ever going to bite the hand that feeds him and changes him and bathes him.
Last question on them. Jamie wants a quote unbreakable relationship. What do you think that means to Jamie? Dan, do you have any thoughts?
I saw that line. It's like I don't know what he's saying, but I also don't think he knows what he's saying either. I think he's just read it somewhere.
He's just seen somewhere like unbreakable love, unbreakable relationship.
He went to Good Friend in Soho and he got it out of a fortune cookie or something like that.
I was going to say he pulled it out of a fragrance ad, but the fortune cookie works better.
The thing is that the fundamental difference between the British show and the American show, and it might just be that I'm not used to the way like the Americans grammatically speak, that I can't tell whether they're speaking in a forced context, but when the British are doing sort of like piece of cameras, it always feels so much more forced. It always feels like they're being fed lines that they're rehearsing it in their head constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really uncomfortable because it just feels false. I don't feel like I'm getting an accurate representation of what they're saying or what they're feeling a lot of the time.
That's what I miss about Richard, because Richard was definitely playing a character and playing to a type, but he sold every offensive line he ever delivered, you know?
Do you think that he was able to sell it because of his, I think so. I think inherent likability. I mean, it didn't come across in a super negative way. I know some people took it that way. I never did from him because I got the character angle a good deal.
Yeah, I mean, we interviewed him famously and have had communication with him outside the world of the show. Yeah, I mean, but he's a natural. Like, he's somebody who is a natural to be on camera. I think finding people, it's a very tough call, and I don't envy the production companies, because it's what you want to find is somebody, you want like an Ashley and a Manuel, right? Where you totally believe that these two people are real. You can't believe that they're together. And so you don't know what's going to happen. Or Gino and Jasmine, like it's lightning in a bottle. It's very hard to do that here, because you either get like people who are desperate to be on TV, like fucking Tony.
I just want to say, sorry to cut in, but I just have a thought.
I don't think you are sorry.
I'm a little sorry, not a lot, just a little. No, I was going to ask both of you. It's just, I'm thinking about, it's different production companies, same umbrella, but different production companies. I'm just looking at it and I'm wondering if there's in that difference in production companies, and obviously they've been doing it a lot longer over here. Sometimes a producer can pull things out of people a little bit better. Of course, that's going to bring us to Sam and Ollie. And remind everyone, where is Sam located?
Newcastle.
Okay, yes, of course. That's where we are. And okay, before we dive in here, there's a lot to cut apart with a sharp, sharp knife cutting through that skin. Overall thoughts on Sam and Ollie this week before we get into it a little bit deeper.
So I thought that Sam was, in the previous episode, Sam was okay. I mean, we saw her dancing and she was having a great old time. Seems to have a very content life in Newcastle. And now she's just turned into a monster. It's
yeah.
Can we clarify monster?
This is just, her behavior is so consistently insufferable. Like, I was ready to give her the benefit of the doubt when she woke up in the morning, because it's like, whatever, that flight, if they had to drive 4 hours,
it would have probably been maximum 10-hour travel time, including the transfer.
Yeah, it would just be such a fucking nightmare. So I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt when she woke up and she was sort of like in a shitty mood and not having any of his warmth or affection, and just kind of swatting at him. But her determination to be miserable is unparalleled by anybody else on this show, or
I think
indeed any of the spin-offs, except maybe Angela
if
from
you
Way
saw
Ever
the
After.
attitude that she was when Sam was in the pre-interview, Sam was discussing a potential argument that she was going out for, and I think that a lot of the time when you're going on dates or you're even kind of like going out and meeting people and on travel or going out to see friends and everything, if you're not going there in the right mindset, you're going to have a bad time. It's like she talked herself into failure, as it were, from the get-go.
Do we think she's white fanging him?
No, why do you think that she's trying to drive him away at this point?
I feel like she's really angry at him for not, she said before she left that she really needs to find out whether this is for real, or whether it's genuine, and all of this. And I think, honestly, if you have to ask, that's your answer. Like,
Definitely.
if you even have that suspicion to begin with, then this ain't your forever fairy tale or whatever. So I
On
think
that,
she's
I just wanted to ask you on that. She also called herself overprotective, and I was curious if you saw it as overprotective or if there was something else to it.
I think they're both incredibly jealous people, and Ali stated as much.
Well, yes,
Um,
in
yeah.
plain
but
English.
If you fall in love, you have to have the jealous.
but jealousy is, even within polyamory, jealousy is a perfectly natural trait to have. It's how you deal with that jealousy and how you communicate that to your partner. They're both so incredibly young. I think that they're just having a hard time navigating that, and the answer to deal with that is go to fucking therapy.
Which they won't.
No.
I think I agree with what you're saying about jealousy completely. I think it's a generous take that there's any substance to this relationship beyond, I need to go somewhere. This is how I get there. And I'm alone and want to be with someone. And this is someone who is dependent on me for something very important to them. And I'd rather take that and resent them for it and still have the company and have the affection and the words and whatever than be alone. And maybe she's angry at herself for knowing that even if he said to her face, plain as day, I don't give a shit about this relationship, I will leave you as soon as I possibly can, that she would still accept it as long as she got to marry him.
Do you think because she has a quote that says my whole life is pretty much on the line? Do you think
Mm-hmm.
that's taking all of what you just said kind of into account, just, how she's viewing this relationship? What do you make, like, my whole life is on the line? Is it because she's trying to make a commitment, or is it something else that I'm not seeing? Because it feels like it feels like a big comment, and I don't know if I feel like it matches the mood, let's say.
I think that it's difficult to tell because we don't know what Sam's dating history is. She
Right.
could have dated and been in relationships with dozens and dozens, hundreds of people, or this could be her first one. And the thing
Right.
is that when you come up against confrontation and you're in a very new relationship, it always feels like a catastrophe. And then you date some more
Yeah,
people
that's
and it becomes
true.
less of a problem. And then you date a few more people and it's like, whatever. I think that they're pinning, I forget how old they are, but it kind of gets to the point where it's like you just want to kind of grab him by the neck and kind of go, "This is not the one. Like, move on, learn from this." Especially with Ali, because he seems earnest to a fault.
That's what I love about him. I really like he irritated the hell out of me in the beginning and I couldn't stand him and it was just too much. But I really appreciate him because now that I've seen this other side of him, it's almost like there isn't any guile actually.
It's
It doesn't
almost
occur to him to lie.
it's almost as if the line producers were kind of like sat there with the rushes from the first episode and was like, you know what, this isn't going to work. Make her the bitch instead.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't think they had to work too hard.
Do you think that Ali is genuine?
I think he's genuine. Yeah, I do think he's genuine. I think they have different ideas about what this relationship is, and I don't think either of them are very curious about what the other one thinks,
To
to be
say the
honest.
least, yes.
Yeah. There is one comment that I want to pick up before we go to them. Well, the lunch of it all and the going out of it all. So Sam says that she would expect him to pick her up from the airport to do the 4-hour journey,
Right.
and she would want more than flowers upon her arrival. This really stuck in my craw for some reason. What what do we do at an airport that's
Beyond
more than
flowers and
flowers?
Asuelu dance, that's going into the American version. Please, either of you, please jump in and tell me if there's some great British custom beyond flowers at the airport that is that I'm missing out on here.
No, there isn't any. I don't think the problem with that situation is that I don't think he could have done anything right. He could have got like the
No.
gaudiest stretch Hummer, filled it to the brim with WKD blue, fucking chicken, like boneless chicken strips from whatever
Boneless.
place.
Iceland.
Yeah, from Iceland.
He said himself, this is the easiest thing. So why not?
It's the
do
least I can do.
easiest thing? Yeah. I'm not big on rose petals. I don't go for that kind of a thing.
No.
Because
It's not for me.
because it's cheesy, or because you don't want flowers all over the place?
I just think like you're making a mess for no reason, and if you need to have if you need more if you're meeting someone that you're in a long distance relationship with and that you haven't seen in a long time, and you want to just be with them, the fewer accessories the better. Like I'm a very simple lady. I just give me a clean room and a clean bed, and we're the only ones in it, and I'm happy. I don't
So
need
you
rose
wouldn't,
petals.
you don't need like an extra like couple of cups of or quarts of pollen sitting in the room. Not a necessity.
No, I like flowers, but and I don't like gas station flowers either, or 7-Eleven flowers. I think that's the other trope on these shows that I struggle with.
I think it's less about the petals and it's more the gesture, right? And
That's the idea.
And it's about when you're kind of like preparing a room like that or whatever, you want a level of consideration, and it's so tropey and so done. Do you really want the petals, or does your Instagram account want the petals?
Yeah.
Yes, excellent point, Dan. Because it becomes, hey, look at this cool picture I took because look how romantic I am. I did what everyone else does and I saw it in a movie once. And that takes away a little bit of feeling. and ingenuity.
I'd rather have go Caesar of before the 90 days style and have candy panties on the bed waiting for me than rose petals.
Shout out to the Antabs out there.
Oh
That was
my
a joke.
god, that was
That
our
was a joke.
first ever inside joke.
That was the joke that never made the cut. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, that was our I'm seriously going to get emotional over that because that was our first ever inside joke. Was that I think
We were talking about how I hadn't really watched much of Caesar, and then I established the fact that he was a nail tech, and I was like, well, he's not really nail tech presenting. He wasn't really assigned nail tech at birth, so then that was where Antab came from. And it's
Not assigned nail tech at birth.
Yeah, no, and that's how Cousin Dan became producer of first a guest and then producer of the show. Because how can you how is someone who comes up with Antab not family? You know what I mean?
1,000,000%. And I feel like I've been fully integrated now because I remember hearing that joke as a listener.
No, I'm putting us back on track. I'm saying
Can we get to the meat of the conversation?
Yes.
And that would be the Turkish grill, which both me and my viewing partner thought looked absolutely phenomenal. And and I have a deep, deep relationship with Turkish grill, specifically Kurdish, which is what a lot of the Turks do cook.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're a subjugated class and ethnicity, they just claim it as Turkish.
I think you'd be hard pressed to get better Turkish food outside of Turkey than you can in London. It's fucking phenomenal and it's so good. And especially in my old neighborhood when I lived in West London, it was like it's just that it's the freshest, most delicious and healthy leaning food you can get.
It's interesting though, Turkish cuisine's affected by everything where I live. I live near a neighborhood that is called Little Armenia, so all of our Turkish food is sort of mixed with Armenian cuisine, which is similar but different. This made me upset. Ali put a lot of work and thought into this. We see he was very excited. He had called ahead. He did the whole thing. He got the wine set up, and literally, as soon as she sits down, it's not even at the food at first. She makes a face at Rosé, which
Okay.
what was, yeah.
So
go ahead.
cousin, back me on this.
Deadest beverage ever.
The only kind of wine this bitch ever drinks is the House Pinot Grigio at Weatherspoons with lemonade top.
In a pint glass with ice.
Yes,
and
correct.
A straw. Yeah.
Yep.
And that bitch is doing God's work by not putting her lipstick all over the rim of the glass.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
God.
But it was just there was no. This is where it's like, what is this relationship? There's zero respect. She doesn't seem to care, and then she just wants to bitch and complain. It's not how, if someone set up something for me and I didn't like the food, there's a tactful way to handle things, and there's also, you can kind of move your food around a little bit. She seemed way too happy to be like, this is gross, I hate it, and not eating anything.
Disgusting.
So I think that ultimately comes down to just sort of like a level of cultural intelligence. If you go to certain cultures and you reject the food, it's deeply offensive, and that might be something that your grandmother's cooked. It might be in a restaurant. They were super accommodating. They took that plate away and they brought it back exactly what they wanted, what she wanted. But they could have served her favorite meal in probably her favorite platter, which is a styrofoam fucking package, and she would have still been unhappy with it. She was there and she was ready to fight. The one thing that I would, and it's a note that I made, is that she did raise a point about who was paying for the visa, and he seemed very, very evasive on that, to the point of it being a little bit weird, where it was like, well, your money's my money, you can have all my money. And I think that it's really important when you're making a visa application that you understand that it's a joint venture. It's not necessarily, well, it shouldn't be for the direct benefit of the applicant. It should be for both parties.
So then wouldn't
So
the fair thing to be, it was 500. Couldn't they have split it 250, 250? And
it's definitely not 500 for a visa application.
that's what they quoted. I don't think that's real. But if let's just say whatever the cost is, would you think it would be fair for Ali at the least to say he would pay for half because we're in this together? Or do you agree with the fact that he's like, hey, we're getting together, our money is one?
No, I think it should be half and half.
Or you could take the other position, which is she spent a ungodly amount of her disposable income going back and forth from Turkey, and he's not having to pay out for it, so he has to pay for his own way there.
I wonder
at the very least, have the money effectively loaned to them, and then receive it back over installments or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder what his financial situation is, because we see he has the housing situation, which is either free or very, affordable based on where he works. So I don't know, he's a young guy. He's a bartender. You'd think he'd be making some tips. The way I took his reaction just at face value was it sounded like she was saying she either needed the money immediately or as you're earning some money, small increments, I want all of it. That's how I kind of saw his face kind of taking it in. And I don't know if either of you agree with that or if you felt the same thing.
I just wasn't buying this argument. I think this is more of like just another rod that she's making for her own back of, I'm giving this guy every opportunity to tell me that he's using me.
Right.
He's told me directly that, it's equally important to be with me as it is to get to England somehow. I don't know how many more times she needs to hear it.
Okay, but now you're bringing up a point that I'm remembering, which is when they get to, and please tell me if I'm jumping too far ahead, but it's the discussion about what's more important to Ali. Can we touch on that yet, or do you want to work into that?
And
absolutely.
you said both.
Well, yeah, okay. So he's being honest because obviously the false answer that she wants, whether it, I say false, but it's the answer she wants, whether it's true or not, is, oh yeah, baby, of course, it's all for you. But he's super honest and he's like, yeah, no, it's both. I love you. I want to go for you, but also England offers me much better opportunities than I have at home. And, a lot of people are going to take that a certain way. It is true. Do you think he could have been a little less obvious about it? Do you think it was necessary to be less obvious?
No, like I keep saying, no matter how obvious he makes it, she's going to completely ignore it, and then she's going to talk about how he lied to her and swindled her and all of this. So this is just, she's just gathering ammunition and really showing her ass at this point, because it's just not, this is just so fucking dumb.
I think if he'd gone, I will travel to the end of the world for you. I will live in a hovel in an undescribably bad country and genuinely mean it. She would then go, no, you're lying, yeah. You're a liar.
She would hit him. She would smack him for saying something nice.
No answer.
Don't touch me. I'm not a dog.
You can't touch me. I'm not a dog. Get off me. Get off of us.
Get off of us. Yeah. Speaking of which, fun characteristic of the new cat, the Geordie accent, excuse me, is she's not talking about multiple people. When she says us or we, she means herself.
I most recently heard this when I was rewatching Lord of the Rings recently. It's a little Gollum-esque, the way she speaks. It was all us. I'm just saying there's
No,
a
I
little
didn't.
a little
Sure.
Middle Earth to her twang.
Yeah. Well.
Stupid, lousy hobbitses trying to take us ring.
Thank you, Dan. Nasty hobbitses. So,
Precious.
Nasty hobbitses, me precious. You can't take it off of us.
Oh my word. She wants a romantic relationship without the transactional nature, but actually she doesn't get the power without the transactional nature. So that's not actually what she wants. And so after complaining about how every time they go out, there's always his friends or his family hanging out with them or whatever, she has the fucking nerve to drunk FaceTime her friend from home and then shove him out of the way.
gross, gross, gross.
I loathe this behavior. I hate it.
Well, I mean, there's not much to. Is there anyone out here who likes this behavior?
No, I just, like it's always I don't know. Even when I was in drama school, even when I was in film school, people didn't. And was around acting students, drama students all the time. People didn't fucking act like this.
Are we saying central character syndrome?
I'm saying dumb bitch syndrome.
That's going to bring us over to Sprite and John in Aylesbury. A little bit to get into today. Not too much with them, but just enough. Opening thoughts, Michelle.
Opening thoughts. I've always thought it must be really awkward to be Thai, for example. And I'm not saying that I haven't had really good Thai food in pubs. Like, since gastropubs became a thing, you can get like incredible Thai or Indian or whatever food you want from a pub. But I think this particular one, and I'm happy to be corrected by someone who's been there, I think that Thai food is probably shit. And I think it probably takes every ounce of restraint that Sprite has left, which isn't much at this stage, not to be like, this is not Thai food. This is disgusting. Those are my opening thoughts.
Are you saying it's a low rent representation of Thai food?
I'm just saying it's not Thai food.
What is it?
So for the American listeners, a gastropub is probably the first example of what fine dining refer to as a chaos menu. So you can have the prawn cocktail for a starter, which is very much an English invention, which is prawns in a Mary Rose sauce, which is tomato ketchup, mayonnaise with a bit of paprika. And then you can move on to the chicken tikka masala, and then have the sticky toffee pudding for dessert. It's that kind of menu where you can have everything.
But it's similar. I guess the analog in the US is like when you go to a diner and it's like, this is a Greek diner. And then they like lobster is on the menu and like arroz con pollo. And it's like, it's very, you know what I'm talking about, right, Jack?
Of course I do. I am a New York City guy and I'm a big diner patron in New York, but there is nothing more upsetting than seeing a 70-page diner menu with lobster thermidor on page 47. You know, maybe not what you want to do. I'd go with some eggs or a grilled cheese, probably safer.
Yeah.
It's when the menu's a telephone directory. That's when it's a problem.
It's a common problem in America, no matter where you are. But you two, getting back into Sprite and John here, we start with, John basically lives in the forest, and we have Sprite who says he's really not into living in the forest. And Michelle, you had a great line here. You told me that was unusual because Sprites usually do love living in the forest.
Sprites are usually native to the forest or the woodland. So, yes. The sister, John's sister, whose name I can never remember, comes in hot. You know, I would have at least waited for everyone to finish their spring rolls before accusing my brother's partner of cheating on him. So, cousin, can you fill us in a little bit on that story of what happened, if you remember?
Oh, when there was the stand-up confrontation between, well, I mean, it was confrontational in this sort of like super strange way, and then she's like, "Well, you cheated on my brother," to which he went, "Yeah, and I saw him on the apps." So it was this whole sort of, they did the classic digging up old shit for the sake of it in order to score points, which is, that's a totally normal and healthy way to deal with your current conflict, is to bring up old shit. Like,
I thought the sister was pleasant the way she was speaking, but one of you, please correct me. I thought she was cute, so I don't know. Did I just think she was pleasant because I thought she was cute, or was she pleasant? I didn't think she was bringing up anything too harsh.
Robin has a very similar affliction where if a pretty girl on TV is talking, she could be the subject matter could veer into things deeply unpleasant and inappropriate, and he wouldn't notice because it's Aubrey Plaza or whatever.
the one thing that she said that really stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and it was basically just because it felt like sort of a non-scene. The food was mediocre, and the what they were trying to achieve with that scene was pretty mediocre. So the one thing that kind of like stood out like a sore thumb was that she said, "Talk about your feelings, guys. It's not that hard."
Yes.
Now, if you ask two men to talk about their feelings to each other, then I think that she's living in a different kind of reality, because men don't talk about their feelings unless they've gone to therapy and have learned a communication style. What's clear to me, and it's always a running trope within the 90-day industrial complex, is that people just haven't learned to argue properly. And it's something that we bring up time and time again.
Right.
Nobody's navigating situations well. We've also got to bear in mind that a lot of the time these people have seen each other for a total of 6 weeks. And you're generally speaking a lot more polite to people in the first 6 weeks of your relationship, a physical one-to-one relationship, than you would be if you'd lived with somebody for 6 months.
So, Cousin Dan, I wanted to get your perspective on this as a polyamorous person. So these two live apart and have lived apart. I get a lot of codependency to a sickening and kind of crippling degree from John. And that's not me saying codependent people are sick. Like, I just mean that his codependency is so palpable, it makes me extremely uncomfortable. Do you think that do you think that this couple, or that John really could do polyamory, or do you think that his type of personality fit wouldn't work in that kind of relationship?
So I don't think it necessarily comes down to personality. I think that it's where you are at the right time. So polyamory it's not a hard and fast rule. There's certain sort of notable manuals. If you're wanting to read about polyamory or explore it, there's a book called The Ethical Slut, which is fantastic. And that is almost
that's
like
what they called me in college.
Heyo.
But back to the point.
Law school, really. Sorry.
I think that Jonathan has to do a lot of work on himself, and I agree with you. It's the way that he is gives me a real anxiety, because I have both experienced that kind of energy in a relationship, and I've also expressed that kind of energy in a relationship. And it was when I was putting that energy out that I realized that something was wrong and I needed to address my behaviors. The thing is that Sprite doesn't need this relationship, and Jonathan definitely does, and that's the most dangerous kind of relationship you can have. If you need a relationship, if you need your boy/girl, then that's an unhealthy expectation and an awful lot of pressure on an interpersonal relationship. And you also get that with platonic friendships as well.
Sure.
When you crave and need the attention of somebody that maybe it's not reciprocated the other way, it makes you feel empty and exhausted, and you need to find help. And I don't say help in the kind of like you need to get help. You need guidance and support, probably from a professional, to navigate your way out of that, because having kind of like gone through therapy and had a fantastic experience with it, and I know it isn't for everybody, coming out of it on the other side and realizing that the best relationship to be in is one that you choose to be in rather than what you need to be in. It's wonderful. Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask, off of that, where do you place this this issue where they're talking, where Sprite and John are discussing the dating apps, and that Sprite's going back 7 months to the last time he caught John on a dating app? Where does that fit into their story for you? Do you think that's just kind of like some extra BS to throw in there, or do you take that seriously when you're watching them?
I think that it was engaging in something called whataboutisms, which is like a rhetorical tactic, but a lot of people do it all the time, especially when they're in the fight or flight mode of an argument or a conversation, is that they just start to throw things around. It becomes a reductive conversation at that point. And I would typically posit that if you're having a high stress conversation like that, you need to take a break, because it's just turning into a reductive conversation. I refer to it as blood sports. It's just blood sports by that point. You're just trying to take chunks out of each other and cause as much psychic damage as possible.
Do you think do you either of you think that this is, you brought up the polyamory, is this a polyamorous relationship, or?
Absolutely not. This is
right.
No.
This is no.
Right. Because they're, getting angry at each other for dating. But do you think, so was Sprite saying that him being caught with another man was he blaming John's foray into the dating apps for why he was caught with another man?
Yes, he was using it as an excuse for sure. I think I would venture to guess that this is, and this isn't a judgment, but I think it's probably something that happened fairly often, and this was a time that he happened to get caught.
Gotcha.
But what I wanted to ask Cousin Dan is, I suppose what I meant was in terms of personality is the wrong. I think I meant attachment style, really, because one thing that I can't figure out with John is there are many types of codependent people, and I'm speaking as a recovering codependent myself, right? So there's like an any dick will do codependent, meaning like I just need a warm body next to me all the time, and much like Sean on Love in Paradise, I can't go 8 months without sex. Sorry, like that's not going to do it for me. But I think and I'd love to get both of your reads on this. I personally think that for John, I don't know that there's much delineation between having somebody physically close and having somebody emotionally close. So I think for him, it's way more serious an offense to be talking to other people, because I think he's a demisexual, I think he has to have feelings for someone. And so I think there's more danger of him sort of straying if he's not getting what he wants. What do we think?
So this calls back to sort of like the fact that I think that this cast is wholly asexual. I think that you are right. I think that John considers even the slightest. John would be the type of person who would be like if you were exchanging, if there was a flirtive exchange between a bartender and Sprite, it'd be like, oh my God, you just cheated on me. It's the attention. I think that he craves the attention. I think that
I've been online cheated on.
yeah.
I do. Let me ask you both about that. Where does online cheating rate? Like if you're dating someone and you have a little online flirt with someone on a dating app in particular, is that considered cheating to either of you?
Well, I would question why you would, if you were in a monogamous relationship and it was clear that you were, why would you be on a dating app in the first place? Because it's different to flirting on Facebook or Twitter, because there's no assumption that you're there for one thing and one thing only. Yeah. Whereas if you're on, and I would also suspect that the online dating app that they're referring to isn't Tinder, it's Grindr.
Can you, if you wouldn't mind, with the Grindr, just for straight people out there, Grindr, is it a dating app or a hookup app? How would you
I want all straight men to download Grindr and then explain it to their wives. So I'm not going to educate. I'm not here to educate the heteronormative people here. Can we move on to discussing the sacrificial blood altar conversation? So there was that very, very strange moment where they're both in bed, sat at the altar to Sprite and John's love, in which they started talking like characters from The Room. And they were like...
The altar you're speaking of is the Christmas lights with the random pictures hung up on it?
Exactly that, yes. And they were supposed to be having this... It just felt so kind of like, I am sorry I did this. It's like, it's okay, I forgive you, kiss. And then Sprite has this look that should have been captive, but in actual fact, he would look like he was being held captive. It was like...
He looked haunted. He looked like one of the girls in Picnic at Hanging Rock. Like he just totally dissociated, went to a place. It wasn't good.
What do you think precipitated the dissociation? Was it just the banal conversation? Was he not interested, or what?
No, I think he's just understanding that, like, I really can't move my return flight up, can I? Because this is just, I think it's that kind of moment. It's like, I always get that when, like, when we used to go to my mother-in-law's house and there would be either weather that prevented us from driving or because we drive an electric car, there were no like open places or whatever, because it's not like an electric car heavy part of the country. Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, we're here for another night, so better get dinner started. Like that's where I go in my head of like, okay, I really can't leave because the trains aren't running because there are leaves on the track, and we can't get the car to go, and I can't call a taxi, and so I'm stuck here arguing with my mother-in-law about expiration dates again. So
when Sprite gets the cab back to the airport, when he says goodbye, because John probably won't go with him, he'll just sort of like have this sort of like reluctant, vacant smile, and then you just see the car coming, like, you know, kind of like careening closer and closer to the back of his, like at the end of Marcy May Marlene. And then you realize that it's fucking over, right?
To cut in on that, that was the director of that film you just mentioned used to be a great friend of mine who I had something at Cannes with many years ago. Interesting film.
Love that film.
Well,
so good.
It's horrific. It's so fucking scary.
The work. So the early days of that production. Good film. People should check it out.
And speaking of rough cuts, should we move on? As in transitions that aren't very good. Can we move on to our new
favorites?
Love to hate cast member, Tony?
Are you talking about Tony and Nui? Is that where we're going now?
Yes, and if you don't mind, Jack, I'd like for our cousin to
Of course.
introduce Tony.
Tony, the laddiest lad that's ever ladded in the laddersphere. It's just
Master of the Ladiverse.
so Tony embodies this archetypal British man. I get this sort of like real God and country first, but also I'm having a biracial relationship, which is so fucking rote and such a fucking stereotype. And of course, she's fucking Thai as well. Like, it's like you couldn't be any more obvious.
We call ex-military or former military squaddies here, unless they are on the show SAS Who Dares Wins, which made a I don't know if it made the splash that I wanted it to in the US, but they basically do that like it's the equivalent to Special Forces, Navy SEALs kind of training. Those guys are, well, there's one that I like in particular. I'm not going to go into it, but respect on that. The best part of that show is that one of the officers or ex-officers on that show was attacked by a circus chimp, and there's an episode where he describes the attack, and of course it's traumatizing, as I'm sure it was, but when you put circus chimp into, like, it can't not be funny. It's impossible. and people are talking about, like, time that they saw their trigger warning, like their friends' heads get blown off, or all the terrible things that happened during the war, and this guy's like, well, I always knew that I had to grow up to be odd because I was attacked by a circus chimp, almost pulled my face off, and yeah. Anyway, Tony reminds me a lot of the circus chimp guy. I also I've got a strong feeling that his source of income, that there are multiple streams, that not all of them are legitimate, and that he is about 300,000 pounds in credit card debt, because there is no way. Private security is a good gig. It's not this good for anyone.
Oh, correct me
There's
if
no
I'm wrong.
fucking way he makes this much money.
He lives in Chelsea, which is not cheap as far as I know. So is that where some of your thinking is coming from?
Well, in fairness, he's in a basement flat, which probably belongs to one of his employers, and he probably doesn't have to pay very high rent. And cousin, I think you'll back me up on this. There is no way that this man completes his tax returns accurately.
So with the way that UK tax works, is you only have to pay as much tax as your conscience allows you to not pay.
Yes,
so
correct.
And he is 1001% the type of person that thinks that taxation is an act of state violence against the individual.
Unpatriotic.
Yeah.
He is shady. I'm not sure that any of what we're seeing. I mean, I feel like I'm looking at a narcissist here. The fact that he's been dating a woman for a year, claims to be best friends with his sister, and she doesn't know anything about this, and she was OTT as well. I almost felt like she might be from Central Casting, because the relationship between the two of them was so fucking unnatural. But we can I guess we can move on to that bit, can't we?
Yeah, when he kind of alludes, or he kind of like comes out and goes, so there's a girl and she's in Thailand and I'm going to spend a lot of time there, and she's like, I am shocked and angry. And I was like, bitch, what? Like, but this is also me coming from somebody who, like fam is fam, right? And if you see them, you see them.
Yeah.
But there's no there's no kind of like schedule or obligation to see people. If you're busy, you're busy. And also, she should be used to that. He was in the forces.
What offended me the most is she goes, but it's Thailand, like Thailand. Like,
If you,
so I was annoyed by that sort of like Asian hate, and also this weird fucking notion that's like, what if she gets back with her ex-husband? Like, that's something like, oh, you know how those people always get back together with it. Like, what? Why would that happen? First of all, why would that happen? And why would that, if that were to happen, why is that not a white people thing? Like, do you know what I mean?
what, in terms of why doesn't everybody get back with their exes? Why is that specifically a racial thing or an identifier?
Yeah, it was like she was trying to find ways of being racist that maybe not every sensitive ear would pick up on. Like, she's not hitting the same beats that we always hear, which is like, oh, she's in it for the money. She just wants to be in England. All of that shit. She's a grifter, whatever. And instead she's gone with, what if she gets back with her ex-husband? I thought that was the fucking weirdest left turn that anyone's taken so far.
But it seems to me that he is more open to going over there now.
Yes.
To talk about kind of the fact that she's got 2 children.
Right.
If she's either going to have to put in an application for the kids to come over, or she's going to have to abandon them and leave them with their father. So whatever situation they're in. Now,
so how does that work? As our resident UK immigration specialist, how does it work with bringing children and families over?
So it depends what's on the birth certificate. If you can end up in a situation where it's just the mother on the birth certificate and the father's name is left blank, it becomes a lot easier because you don't need express permission from the other parent to bring them over. Now, it's not as simple as the dad, if they were coming over, it's not as simple as just the dad writing a letter supporting them to come over, as you have to do when a child leaves the UK and it's with one parent. You have to get written permission because you can be stopped at the border and they can prevent the child from traveling. It's basically not even overzealous and overcautious policy that the UK border force going out has in terms of preventing things like child abduction, child flight to another country where permission hasn't been granted from both parents. But in the case of a child coming to the UK, you would need a court order effectively rescinding your parental responsibility in order for that child to reside in the UK. And that it's a fairly strict rule when it comes to making the application.
In essence, would you have to relinquish your rights to the child for the child to legally
Correct.
move? Okay.
Legally, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do either of you think Tony wants to be a father, regardless of what he says or acts like or anything? What are your both opinions, respectively, on Tony's penchant for fatherhood? Wow, that says a lot right there.
I don't know what his motivations are. It's certainly not love.
Right. Are you saying? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm just trying to imagine someone who, and first of all, I imagine that his long game is that, she'll bring her kids over and he will immediately get her pregnant and that will be his favorite child. So he's more thinking in terms of like, who's going to be the mother of my children, not who are my stepkids. But he's going to, like Nui's mom wisely points out, anyone can say I love you, anyone can say any of these things, but you need the actions to back it up. I can't see someone who is that meticulous in both their because first of all, when you have kids of any age, even if they're, you know, even if they're not babies, like her kids are not babies, he's not going to be able to keep an immaculate house with those kids around. He's not going to be able to, presumably, he's going to want to put them in private school because, you know, he's all about image.
I know who he
He's
reminded me of. You just reminded me who he reminded me of. He reminds me of Patrick Bateman, Christian Bale in American Psycho. That's how kind
I don't
of.
think he's that culturally learned, and I know that
No, I don't
extends to
either.
that extends to. I know that the irony is that he has a very high level of knowledge on Huey and the News, and that's the joke, is that he has an encyclopedic knowledge of Huey and the News, which is culturally garbage. That was the shtick with American Psycho, wasn't it? He was completely
Yes.
superficial, knew an awful lot about really banal shit, and it seemed that the humor didn't necessarily carry over. But
Did y'all know, by the way, that in terms of costume and wardrobe design, because, and I mention this because that's such an iconic wardrobe design movie, Rolex gave permission for everyone else except for Christian Bale to wear a Rolex. So he doesn't actually, even though he points to it and refers to it, it's not a Rolex. It's like a Seiko
Because Rolex
model
didn't
something.
want the title character serial killer to wear a Rolex.
Correct. And they had similar, they had to have custom suits made for him because they couldn't, and part of the reason why he's like naked when he's killing people most of the time is because they had they had to have this beautiful designer wardrobe for him, and none of the designers wanted him. They were like, fine, he can wear it, but not while he's killing anyone or talking about killing anyone.
You're telling me even Hugo Boss refused to make an outfit for him to kill him?
Yeah. Yeah. And it went as far as like he puts the bodies in garment bags, and I think there was only I don't want to say it was Galliano, but I strongly suspect it was. I think Galliano was like, yeah, absolutely use my garment bag as a body bag. I don't give a shit.
Well, I should rephrase. I think Tony views himself as Patrick Bateman when he watches American Psycho. Maybe no one else does, but I think he feels some inner Patrick Bateman.
No, I agree with you completely. That's not compatible with having children who you can't control at all times, and that really worries me because I think it's the level of control that he needs, and I think we're going to see this. Unfortunately, we're going to see it escalate quite quickly when he loses control to, you know, verbal abuse, and then there's probably going to be some things broken or thrown.
I can just picture Tony's biracial child at sort of 4 years old, and Tony would definitely have. It's definitely a boy. This is what I'm picturing. It's definitely a boy. Has an identical haircut to his dad's. If they were at a wedding, they would be wearing identical suits. And also, Tony is that small, that 4-year-old child could probably fit in it.
That's true.
Because, like, even though he is ex-forces and is a elite bodyguard for the rich and famous, he is also a manlet. Which, shout out to the short kings there, but it is funny.
How short?
Like because I am a 5'8" themlet king, which puts me at the upper sphere of height. So I don't give a fuck about my height, but I know that it bothers Tony immensely, and it keeps him awake at night.
How tall is Tony, do you think?
5'8", top 5'8", probably 5'4".
I think
in shoes 5'8".
I think you know how Tom Cruise allegedly wears lifts in his heels?
Yeah, allegedly.
So-
Sure, allegedly.
Yeah. So
And allegedly also goes to the Bussy bar on occasion as well.
Well, it's all alleged, but I have the one nice thing that I have heard about him is that he is a very generous person with his staff. He always tips well. He if he's, speaking at a venue or anything like that, he makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. I wonder where he learned how to do that.
He does have one
I
other
cat
interesting thing I want to add to what you're saying, which is I've heard this from people who have worked with him and just in other interviews. He will remember your name. If you, no matter who you are,
Yes.
he'll remember your
Mhm.
name and refer to you by name for the entire duration that you work with him. So he does a good
Yep.
job of acting like a person.
The point that I was getting to is I imagine that as a short king himself, Tom probably wasn't stingy with getting Tony custom made lifts in his shoes. So I'm going to put Tony at 5'6". I think he is 5'9" on a good day with the lifts in, and I think he tells people that he's 5'11".
5'10". All right. Split the diff.
No,
Okay.
5'11".
Yeah.
Almost 6 feet. That's what he says.
Yeah.
You two
See,
want.
I
Yeah,
have
sorry,
the
go ahead.
opposite problem. I'm tall. I'm not 6 foot, but I'm 5'9". And when I was on the dating apps, I would change my height to either 5'8" or 5'7", and I got way more interest the shorter I
Now, when
claimed to be.
you would meet a gentleman, would you slouch so they would think you were actually shorter?
I would make sure I was sitting down. No, I would just put heels on and I'd be like, oh yeah, these are like 8-inch heels. They make me feel more confident.
Now, I wanted to move on to this Tony and his buddy, who I did not catch his name. Did either of you catch the friend's name? Or does it matter?
It's not important. He'll just look up your local English Defense League chapter of.
Yeah, I mean, there is a very dog whistly tattoo that the friend has, and we're going to leave it at that. Let's call him
Yes.
let's call his friend Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
Again, we're getting this sort of like narrative of like, I've been to Thailand and I've met this woman, which
Oh, here we go.
it's one of those. And I just remember I get the feeling that the producer on this this section would have been going, okay, can we do that again, but not repeat? Oh, that's big, that lad. That's big, that lad. Like they're talking about the fucking cocks that they saw in the fucking shower when they were in the forces that they were inevitably going to fucking go down on.
Well, see, I thought the energy that I got off this guy was they were meeting in a park because easy to film in when you're not on sticks. You don't need a permit. The feel I got was it was a very like accidental cottaging scenario where like he thought he'd show up a little early to filming and he thought he might get his dick sucked and do some recreational drugs in the public men's room. And then Tony went in there to take a shit and he rang his friend and then he heard the ringing and the friend came out and he's like, yeah, just, getting my whatever squats in early. Because he could not wait to stop filming. I've never seen somebody rush through a scene like that.
All I'm saying is if a production crew was ever going to be like, so what we're going to do is we're going to do some establishing shots of you working out, I'd be like, absolutely not. Get me reading fucking poetry in the corner of a coffee shop or something like that. You do not need to see my sweaty fucking body in unflattering gym attire. Because, like, maybe I'm just more self-aware than half the these pricks on this show, but like it's not a good look.
Dude,
One because women or like the opposite sex, typically speaking, don't find it attractive, and for two, all the gym bros are going to be like, your form is awful. So you're getting it from both sides.
I totally agree. I can't stand. I worked for. I was the interim director of marketing at a medical tech company, and I have listened to hours and hours and hours of Silicon Valley men in their 30s and 40s talking about how little or how much they eat, how often they inject things, what sort of, I don't know, workout cult they're in, macros, micros, paleo diet. I've been through the ringer with all of that. And if you think like the women's side of diet culture is exhausting and nauseating and way too much, it's so much more tedious for men.
Right. And that is going to bring us to Nui. We get to meet Nui with her own intro. Any initial takes on this intro?
Okay. I'm not. I was a bit put off by the brassy burlesque music because it was giving, Sweet Charity, Hey Big Spender energy, and that's not. I don't think that she's the kind of gal that you pay for a dance. Not casting any aspersions. I think that was the implication, and I was like, oh, he met her at a strip club, right?
Sure.
Because she was sort of wearing costumes or whatever. Anyway, I think that was a mischaracterization. She's gorgeous. She seems really smart and like she has it together. I think she is into him, but I don't think she really knows who he is because I think she's only seen this version of him where he's in holiday mode and slightly more relaxed. Although I promise you, y'all, if you've seen the first season of White Lotus, if Tony didn't get the pineapple suite, it would be game fucking over. It would be, yeah, it would be a saga, and none of any of his acquaintances or family members would ever hear the end of it. And he would definitely call the Daily Mail and have them do a piece on it where he's giving the nastiest compo face you have ever seen. Adult braces, not my favorite thing, but you have to do what you have to do. I had braces for years. I completely understand.
Maybe she came into the economical ability to have braces when Tony entered her life.
I assume so. The reason I started laughing is because I thought you were going to ask me whether she was assigned braces at birth. Assigned adult braces at birth.
So the thing is, when you have slender older women with braces, it immediately infantilizes them, and then that makes me think that Tony's into that.
You're wrong.
It's also a big sugar daddy thing. The only other thing I wanted to say about Nui, I love her mom too. Her mom's a pragmatist. That's a tough relationship to have with a mother that I might be very familiar with. Is you don't necessarily get a shoulder to cry on all the time because they show their care for you in a different way, and it may not be as tender or sympathetic as one might like, but she's got a good head on her shoulders. I agreed with absolutely everything she said. The only other thing I wanted to say beyond that is I've never tried Muay Thai, but my ex-partner did it for a couple of years, and he says it makes your ass bleed because you get punched in the stomach a lot. Yeah.
It's a brutal sport.
Yeah.
So I don't have a bad word to say about Newey, and that's purely based on fear.
Fear of the listeners or fear of Newey?
Fear of Newey. Like, Tony can go fuck himself. I'm terrified of Newey.
You're afraid she'll come and make your ass bleed.
Corrugate me. She would play me like a fucking accordion.
The gentle touch you're looking for, Dan?
No. Though I rarely do.
Do you have any wrap-up comments on these two? Michelle, you look like you have a comment left.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I think that's a great place to leave it. Before we do, let us shout out sustainable slow fashion resort wear line Anushka, made in Toronto. This is from one of our listeners. She can offer her fellow Blighty Day Bays a 10% off discount with code Blighty Day. That's all one word. Blighty is spelled BLIGHTYDAY. The link will be in the show notes, and I will be posting some material on Instagram for you to look over. Thank you so much for writing to us. If you have an LGBT business, please let us know. We will shout you out for free on our podcast because it's Pride Month, and we want to celebrate you. You've done so much for us as a community, and the very least we can do is promote your businesses. We love you all so much. Again, Patreon, Facebook, socials, do all of that. And I just want to say that if anyone needs a show don't tell about my mother, I got a text from her the other day that said, saw you in pajamas on TikTok. Are you okay?
Was it which one was it that she saw you on? What was the clip that she saw?
The question is, were you simulating an act in the clip that you saw?
No.
And we weren't talking about piss dilution.
No.
Oh, right.
I think I was doing an Angela impression, but the implication there is similar to, and I quote the late great Maria Bamford's mother. When you don't wear makeup, you look mentally ill.
I love that.
I also,
amazing.
Mom, you're not listening to this, and you never will, and I respect that. But I do love you, and you're helping me make my dreams come true by flying me to Los Angeles this Friday, which I'm so excited about. Anyway, yep.
So our next recording for UK will be here. No, you'll still be in London for that one.
Hopefully, but we'll see how it all works out.
Yes, we will.
Basically, we've tried to adhere to a really good schedule. For those of you who have noticed and complimented us on it, thank you so much for those kind comments, and thank you for the reviews. Please review us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. If you don't know what to say on Apple Podcasts, just say,
I drank my 3 liters. That's all you need to put.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I drank my 3 liters, love the show, whatever. Again, email us at bladydayfiance@gmail.com. If it's for one person in particular out of the whole team, just put their name in the subject line. The rest of us won't read it. So if you have questions about eating Cape Cod pussy, you can direct those to Jack. If you have questions about polyamory and goblinhood, you can send them to Dan.
And drinking your 3
else,
liters.
Yes, and drinking your 3 liters. Anything else can go to me or Robin. We don't have a good sign off, although Jack and I have workshopped a sign off because it can't be seen soon of love you all. Jack is disgusting.
Why are we saying Jack is disgusting?
Because he is.
Okay.
I think she means filthy.
Filthy, yeah. That too.
Sounds like an awful character from a Tim Burton film. Filthy Jack. His name's Filthy Jack. He goes down the street. He's got a sack on his back. What's in it? No one knows. Probably sex toys.
Filthy Jack Skellington. I like it.
And pictures of private school girls. Filthy Jack. Filthy Jack.
Super 8 tapes from 1999.
You should smell his filthy crack.
Good in.
Y'all, if you join the $35,000 Patreon tier, we'll all show our buttholes. I'll do it for less than that.
too.
Honey, they can have it free. I had this conversation with a friend of mine because we were talking about sort of like adult work, and he was like, you know, like, I'm not selling my dignity. It's like, bitch, I give mine freely on the daily. Like, what
I don't have any dignity left to
No.
to sell. I mean, I talk about diarrhea all day, so yeah.
Or I'll be out of currency pretty soon myself on this show.
My name is Michelle. I'm proud to be an IBS influencer queen, and I am signing off. Thank you.
My name is Dan. I'm proud to be a whore, and I'm signing off.
My name's Jack, and I'm proud to have eaten a lot of Cape Cod pussy, and I'm signing off.